Okay, well, we're already starting off really controversial with a meat-heavy diet, totally against the guidelines. Why don't we continue with the seemingly controversial? It's so interesting that this is, um, even like adjacent to controversy. And I understand because there's a lot of, I guess, like emotion wrapped up in this. And we might be talking, obviously, we're talking about autism. There seems to be a movement going around that, like, if you are trying to treat autism or make autism a little bit better in a child, that's like, it's like judging them for being autistic, which I don't really see it that way. We might even talk about things like vaccines and their impact on this kind of thing. And so I always just wish we could have open communications and people can choose whatever they like. That was the frustrating thing about COVID vaccines to me. I don't know whether I made the right choice or not, but I would have liked to have everybody's opinion and be able to talk about it. I didn't feel like we were ever able to do that. So let's start with your story getting wrapped up with autism. When did you become interested and know that this was the career path you were going to go down?
Yes, well, so I was interested in neuropsychology. I was, interested in graduate school in brain imaging. I wanted to just learn more about the brain, and so I did fMRI research. We were taking pictures of the brain as it was working, and it was great. But at the time there weren't really many clinical applications for that. Still today, it's hard to, clinically to use fMRI or brain imaging. It's more of a research tool, and so I was, pushed in the, clinical direction. And as a neuropsychologist, I started working with kids, and just being in the time and place, I just was confronted with autism, so much, like time and time again. And so partly I began to develop a specialty, and so those are the cases that I get. But also those are the cases that are there. Like when you hear about the increasing prevalence, it's real. Like it really is like a seriously increasing prevalence that's happening. And I've kind of been in the middle of it. In the beginning of my career, I started to kind of look into, well, what's going on? It's got to be environmental. There's something in the environment. But at that point in time, when I looked into it, my head just started to spin, because you hear about air pollution, you hear about parental nutrient deficiencies in parents, or viruses during pregnancy, and there are so many factors that are involved, and so it just seems that, like, it just seemed impossible to come to the solution of what's causing it.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. And then for me, it was, in 2021, I heard Chris Kanabi to give a low carb down under talk about seed oils and diseases of civilization. And it was at that point I knew about Weston Price, but I didn't know the kind of the scope of it. I didn't realize that heart disease really didn't exist before the 1900s, and that it's been the leading cause of death, and still has been the leading cause of death since like the mid 1930s. I didn't know about that. I didn't know about age-related macular degeneration, how that is a new disease, how that didn't exist. And the way that he linked everything to not just the seed oils, but that's one of the major driving factor. It just kind of, like, in my head, kind of made everything click. And I just realized, okay, like this is this really can be significant. But that was 2 years ago, and it took me a while to really see the connection with autism, just because there's this added layer of I guess challenge and difficulty in autism, where like some of what you mentioned, where it is sometimes frowned upon if you're trying to cure autism, because, like, what's wrong? You're saying that there's something wrong with them if you want to cure them, right? So that's part of it. But also, it just seemed like it was just there's so much negativity put towards people who are trying to go against the grain in that space. And the mainstream dogma is that diet doesn't really, if you're changing diet, it's not going to really help so much. It's not really worth the trouble. And I just started seeing more and more people who were making amazing transformations. And when I looked at how and what they were doing, it's the same thing. They're following the same principles that we hear about from these other approaches, whether it's Dale Bredesen talking about Alzheimer's disease, or Terry Walls and multiple sclerosis, or Phil Ovadia, Ken Berry, and it's all the same principles, whether it's low carb, keto, carnivore, but also avoiding processed foods, avoiding environmental toxins, eating nutrient dense food, paying attention to stress and sleep, and also getting things like sunlight. I think that it all there is like one solution, I think, that at least the same principles that you can apply for all the problems, including autism.
Yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. Like, it feels like you're going a little nuts when you're telling people like this one thing can fix all of these different problems, and it just seems like it really can. And kudos to Chris Kenobi. He's just such an amazing person. Would you ever guess that by his claim is that it was about 8 years ago, he was the worst public speaker on the planet and taught himself how to do public speaking so that he could then go out and share his message and do presentations? Would you ever believe he was not like a total natural at public speaking?
Right. Yeah. No, he's great. Yeah, I've seen so many of his presentations by now, and yeah, he's great. And I just recently learned too that he does it all pro bono. He's he's not getting he's not working anymore, and he's just doing this all just to give back and spread the message.
Yeah, so on that note, as of the time of this recording, he and Suzanne Alexander, the co-author of his book, The Ancestral Diet Revolution, flew on their own dime into the South Pacific, and they're traveling around to all these different islands, literally like modern day Weston A. Price style, to go to some of these indigenous cultures and really check out like what they've been eating. And they have to take these crazy long flights and these really tiny planes to get these really remote islands. The cost must be so high, but yeah, they're doing it because they love the research and they want to share the message. Super cool.
All right, wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, I can't wait to see what he comes up with. That's great that he's doing
it. Should be amazing. We should be able to host them in a few weeks when they get back to check out their adventures and see what it was like. But yeah, he does amazing work. Their claim is in the book, it's more of the seed oils than it is the sugar and or the carbohydrates. I have to say, I'm not fully convinced one way or another. I just know both of them are a really big problem. Do you have like I don't know, a way you lean, whether it's the carbohydrates and sugar, or whether it's the seed oils, or it doesn't really matter if you go low carb or low seed oil, you're going to be low in both?
Well, I avoid them both. So and as far as like, I don't know which is worse than the other. I think they're both bad. I think having like a high eating a high carbohydrate diet is and keeping your sugars up high in your blood is bad. And I think eating the seed oils is going to contribute to that. And so I think it's best to avoid both. But I guess I'll leave it to some of the other folks like Tucker Goodrich and Lane. I forget his last name, Lane Norton, to have those debates.
Yeah, exactly. We'll leave it to them. We'll stay out of it too. That sounds great.
Okay,
so you mentioned
I'm sorry. When I do see those debates, though, I really am one that looks at the the history and looks at all of the converging evidence, and it means a lot to me when I look at Chris Kenobi's graphs, and when he sees and looks at, well, what's changed? What are the factors that have changed in the diet, and when did they change, and when did these diseases start to pop up? So I definitely lean on the side of seed oils being more toxic, and them not being harmless. Like I definitely don't think that seed oils are harmless.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm glad you added that in. That's a perfect segue. So you mentioned the rising prevalence of autism. I think anybody should be able to look out there and see, like, anecdotally, that certainly seems like that's the case. I don't remember a lot of that when I was growing up. It was a few kids, but not many. And now it seems a lot more. So is this a diagnosis kind of a thing? Are we getting better at the technology to diagnose these kinds of things? Or is this problem really, truly getting worse?
The problem is really, truly getting worse. Like, definitely, we're getting better at diagnosing it. There are more services available. So that by function, more people are going to want to have that label. So there's some of it is due to, increasing diagnosis, but most of it is real. Like, most of the cases are low functioning cases. Kids who have autism plus intellectual disability, and there's no question of whether or not they have, autism or not in these cases. And it's also, I think, the fact that it is something that is being reported in multiple places. There are good studies out of, Dublin, Ireland recently. There was a recent study that came out of Italy recently. And they are showing that there's increases in multiple places and, in similar data.
Yeah. Okay. So you have talked about a documentary that covers this kind of thing, and I haven't watched the documentary. I was able to watch the trailer. I just got done watching it, and well, it's so interesting how parallel this runs to everything we know about health recommendations and nutrition recommendations. Like it's not new that they're saying like we put all our money into the genetic thing, and that's really the wrong place. That sounds like cancer research. Like and the studies that they were talking about, again, they're not like that new. Like it's been around for quite a while that the environment is a big deal and it is huge for autism.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm happy to see that there's so much more momentum and movement in the, autism and diet field. Like even even since I was on, Avadia's podcast and talked about it. I was at a Autism Research Institute lecture on diet, and they were talking, the autism diet is, very similar to, the same diet, the diet that, that you hear about for, diabetes and fatty liver, and, and then you hear David Unwin and Ken Berry talk about, but it starts with like the gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free, and also avoiding food dyes. And then, but now, the evolution of it is now they've kind of moved towards talking about low carb and keto. They emphasize high protein, and they also emphasize examining the vegetables that you're eating and making sure that you're not eating high oxalate vegetables if you have trouble with those. And so it seems like there really is this convergence where, I think based on, I guess just clinical reports, mostly, it's not clinical research, it's mostly like just clinical reports of and some research studies of just success, but things are evolving towards lowering carbs and increasing protein, and I think there's a reason for that, right? I think that I think there's a reason why those things are the things that are helping.